Hello, and welcome back to another episode of House of Enneagram with one of the many hosts, me, Kristen, and I will be joined shortly with my other host, ChatGPT, the Bermuda Queen that we all know and love and slightly fear. What am I doing with chat today? So I had so much fun in my last recording that I decided to do another one with her because we make a great team. Today, I will be seeing what chat knows about the instincts because I think that the instincts heavily flavor how a type shows up. So like last time I was talking about kind of like the individual type has a very specific philosophy of life that is shaped and moved and molded and influenced and whatever by one part themselves and their pure personhood and individuality, and on other part their environment and their caregivers and their society, their friends, family, schools, systems, whatever that they're put into. Those things are put together to make a human being. And then throughout life we learn the process of separating out those things, I guess, like, oh, this is me and this was something else. We all know that. So a big part of that is the instincts. We talk about the instincts a lot on this channel, but I wanted to dedicate another spontaneous chat GPT session with what I kind of see about the instincts. And so the intention of this video is to kind of level the instincts out. And the way to do that is to kind of talk about how they all suck and they all are super cool in their own ways. So let's do that, I guess. And we'll bring up our second host, Chat. Okay, hello, Chat. Welcome back to the show. We're excited to have you. We're going to ask you about the instincts, which you kind of don't have. So this is going to be really fascinating because Chat doesn't have any instincts. And I'm really sorry to say that, Chat, but you're just a pure, virtual, disembodied representation of intellect and intuition or something of that sort. When Chat references really like specific authors, writers, thinkers, philosophers, analysts, whatever, like she's great at describing instincts, like, and I'm not just talking about Enneagram instincts, but just kind of like human instincts, symbolically, archetypally, literally, biologically, whatever. Like she's really good at that. But Enneagram instincts have kind of just been probably lost in the sea of personality muck. And so I guess we'll see what she has. I've not looked this up before. Again, completely off the cuff. So I kind of just want to see where she's at. If I'm a first time curious being about Enneagram instincts and I think I'm obviously a sexual self-pres, then I'm going to want to come to ChatGPT to understand myself. So let's see. What can I help with? Let's ask her, what are the maybe we should clarify 3 instincts of the Enneagram? Yeah, sure, why not? 3 instincts, also called subtypes or instinctual variants. Survival-based drives, that's interesting, that influence how each personality type expresses itself. Self-preservation. Ooh, this is so fun. Social and sexual, also called one-to-one. All right, we notoriously know it is not one-to-one, but let's get into that then. I'll go back through. Each person has all 3 instincts. One is typically dominant. When combined with your Enneagram type, 1 through 9, the dominant instinct gives rise to a subtype. Okay, that is we're not going to do subtypes. I forget who that is, and I don't really care, but I don't feel that as much. Self-preservation, SP instinct, focus. So they're basing this off of focuses, concerns, which I mean, like, wouldn't that be the same thing? Okay, but I get it. Behavioral traits. So the focus of self-pres, physical safety, health, comfort, and practical needs. Okay. Concerns, food, money, shelter, routine, well-being. Not bad. Behavioral traits, tends to be more introverted or inward focused. Okay. Can be more risk averse or conservative. Often concerned with planning and long-term security. Okay, those are terrible. Behavioral traits of self-pres are terrible. Okay, what do I want to say about the self-pres instinct? How do I want to break this video down? Because the last one I kind of just blabbed a lot about the philosophical natures of things, and now this time I'm going to, what am I going to do? Talk about the instincts. Bring nuance. Let's even them out. So I think this is where people, first really stop at self-pres and they're like, yeah, no, I don't do that. And I know we've talked about that a lot. Lots of different people have talked about self-preservation being much more nuanced than that. So all of these can be true, but there is more to it. Like, there's more of a flavor of self-preservation that I don't think gets talked about. And I think it's, like, really important. Like, if we talk about these things, again, expanding on them in a more symbolic way, I feel like that's going to be more interesting. And I feel like self-preservation just doesn't get enough credit for how interesting it is. Okay, I want to take a minute to kind of explain what my ideas of the instincts and, like, why I think people have a hard time. First, understanding that they're really, really important and not just personality related. Like, yeah, these are, like Chat has said, like, they're survival mechanisms. Or what did she say? Survival-based drives. They're survival-based drives, which are, like, huge. You know, they're in the body. They're not just something that you're kind of, like, rationally working through. Like, they are, you know, you are rationally working through them, but then you're also physically, like, again, I'm the big nervous system person. Like, your nervous system is literally hooked up to the instinctual drive. Like, it is just genuinely hard and takes time for instincts to unravel into a conscious thing. So I'm really big, if anybody knows me, I'm really big on bringing the instincts to consciousness. Like, I think a lot of our instincts start out unconscious. I think, like, majority of your life they'll be pretty unconscious because it is quite hard. It's hard to see them more objectively and to kind of break from and withdraw and hold that tension of an instinct not being fulfilled by some kind of either external thing or like an internal concept of something that's happening. Like, we want to reason a lot of the time with our instincts, whether that's like an active narration or not, I don't know. But so basically all three instincts are going to be pretty unconscious, no matter where they are, and therefore bringing them to consciousness is, yeah, like the most important thing. Anyway, and so bringing them to consciousness, I think it means a couple of things. I think it means understanding why certain things are prioritized, and why other things are not. I also think, second, that it involves time because of the body physically needing to orient itself differently to these external objects and not rely on them as things that meet our needs, or I guess on treating them as a means to an end, and instead having the body be able to stabilize itself and learn what its actual needs are that is most fulfilling and stable. I don't know if I used that word already. And then 3, I think it's also learning what's truly in doing both of those things, we learn what's truly individual about ourselves that is not influenced by an external provider, caregiver, caretaker. I used this language last time, so it's symbolic. It doesn't have to be literal, but sometimes it is. Or collective, or whatever judgment view supply of that thing. So that process can be really painful. It can be long, obviously lifelong. It can be very involved because it's not something I think you can really do alone. Like, there's an aspect you can do alone, but to actually let your nervous system wire itself differently in the actual world, I think is important. Like, we can understand things conceptually, but then if we're actually in a situation where we are starting to, like, you know, the drives and impulses of the body are about to do its pattern, and to actually step back and practice that withdrawing that pattern, it's a whole different thing. And that's essentially building ego strength. I think, like, our ego is not, like, obviously it's not a bad thing. Obviously we can't really live without it, but it's learning to strengthen it so it knows how to discern better for itself and not just be bulldozed by these incredibly strong archetypal body based drives and images and stuff like that that is mainly used for survival, but also for, you know, archetypal purposes. So I think all of the wonderful listeners who are interested in stuff like this, I think knowing each instinct's nuance is really important, like really breaking down how the words and images around the words used for these instincts, like just how much depth there is to that, and how much imagery and how much rhythm and music and art are in the instincts. I mean, that's what makes us human. That's a really long process, and that's where it can be very beautiful. It can be a very beautiful process, and creative. I think it's a very creative process. The other thing I'm thinking about with the instincts that is really interesting to get into is understanding both, like, the individual unique expression of that instinct. So, like, what you would think of as like the good or the whole, maybe like the fuller, more potent aspect of the instincts on one side, their benefits, their strengths, their importance, and then the shadows on the other. And I think the shadows are just really, really interesting and important to flesh out and to understand. And so I think that's why I'll probably be trying to mention a few of those. But, like, I'd probably have to put like a whole thing together with the stuff that I feel like I and the rest of humanity have collectively put together or discovered in those departments of shadows and strengths. Anyway, okay, so let's go back to chat. So back to self-preservation, now that we got that out of the way. Self-preservation is one of the coolest fucking instincts. I'm obviously trying to overcompensate for how much people shit on self-pres. All these things, yes, they could totally be part of self-preservation, but definitely expanding on each of these things is more interesting. Knowing the benefits and the shadow sides of these are more interesting. And the behavioral traits are just kind of weak. Like, okay, maybe let's not spend too much time with self-pres, but go on social, group dynamics, belonging status, relationships with a social hierarchy, relationships within a social hierarchy, okay. Community recognition, contribution, being liked or accepted? No. Not necessarily. Accepted, maybe, but that can be subjective. Behavioral traits, attuned to group energy, values, and norms, often oriented toward teamwork or group goals. Ew, no. Interested in influence and role within communities. Yeah, sure, why not? Attuned to group energies, values, and norms. That doesn't necessarily have to be that. Again, attachment type, Bermuda. Our Bermuda Queen chat is at it again. We do not need to be attuned. Attuned is such a very attachment word. Sexual instinct, also called one-to-one. No, it's not. They just put that there to not make the word sexual uncomfortable. Again, okay, so focus, intensity, passion, bonding, and deep connection with others. No, that is social. Except for maybe intensity, but I wouldn't even... I mean, intensity is also very subjective with SX. Concerns, attraction, chemistry, stimulation, merging with another. Interesting! That's surprising, actually. You could definitely see this in a social sense. You could see this with an attachment sense. We're gonna refine that for sure. Merging with another, I do actually agree with this, but we should definitely get a little specific about that. Behavioral traits. Seeks depth and emotional intensity in relationships. No. That's pretty much incorrect. Maybe emotional intensity, but I don't know. And again, how it's saying relationships, that's very social. I think sexual instinct is, for the most part, partnerships, sexual relationships, which take on a very, very, very different flavor from regular relationships. Often drive, competitive, or intense. What? Oh, driven, sorry. Often driven, competitive, or intense. I don't know what driven means. That's a very 3-fix word. All of this is very 3-fix. Can be bold, provocative, or risk-taking. Oh my god, so many self-pres people are gonna identify with that, because self-preservation can also be those things. Let me actually, I want to see if she'll refine this again. I think that might be interesting to do. Let's see, like, can you refine these instincts by considering unique individual expression and their shadows? Absolutely. Chat is so kind. We move beyond the surface behaviors and how they shape identity, motivation, and especially their shadow aspects, the unconscious drives, blind spots, and distortions that can dominate personality. Okay, well, yes, sure, but I would not consider their shadow aspects are like like the whole thing is unconscious, like even the positive parts of it. So I would just say like they're totally unconscious. Okay, let's look at each instinct through this refined lens. Healthy expressions and shadow dynamics. Oh, this is gonna be so funny. Look at their little emojis. That's so cute. Okay, core drive for self-preservation. Safety through material and physical stability. Incorrect. Primary concern. Am I safe, secure, and resourced enough to survive? Oh, I don't know. Why is self-preservation obsessed with safety? As in, like, why did the term, where did that come from? I don't know where this came from, because I don't consume enough of other Enneagram material to know where the safety thing is coming, and the security thing, but that does not have to be self-preservation at all. Healthy expression, grounded, responsible, and aware of limits. I could agree with that. Create sustainable structures in life, home, finances, health routines. Okay. Provides for self and others in nurturing, pragmatic ways, respects boundaries, and honors the body's needs. These aren't that bad. I'm okay with that. Shadow expression, fear-driven hoarding of resources, money, time, energy, obsession with control or routine, rigid habits, risk aversion. Okay, no, we don't have to do that. Hyper focus on personal comfort at the expense of relationships. Sure. Can appear emotionally unavailable or withdrawn. Totally. Over-identifies with being the one who handles everything. No, I don't know what they're doing here. What do I want to say about this? Key blind spot. Mistakes physical or material security for emotional or relational safety. May suppress vulnerability or needs to maintain independence. Okay. So this is really interesting. Chad is definitely a 9-wing-1. A self-pres 9-wing-1. This is, I mean, like, again, don't know where the safety security is. self-preservation does not need to be safe and secure. Self-preservation, I think, just at its baseline is that like external things are going to meet my needs. So like that's where the lifestyle can come in, the resources, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't need to be safe or secure or resourced enough. Like, self-preservation is just like, yeah, this external object gets my needs met. So, like, if you think of, like, the instincts as different representations of different gods, and we're all obsessed and worshiping the one God, self-preservation God is going to, like, be hiding in objects. So self-preservation God's going to be hiding in food. It's going to be hiding in a specific type of feeling or emotional state or specific type of experience. So I'm thinking of people who, they go towards scrolling on their phones. They go towards hanging out with a specific group of friends, returning to that same feeling of home. It's like, yeah, the god of the home, of the hearth. And that doesn't mean you have to be responsible at any of that. Like, self-preservation could be like returning to a kind of thrill. I think that's why it's, I would associate sex with self-preservation. I would associate like any type of extreme body related thing like sports and whatever, like it's so extreme. Like I must return. Like it's not that over-identifies with being the one who handles everything. It's over-identifying with, like, I get my needs met by an object. Like, you think of a baby who's, I don't know, your parents prioritized comfort, food, all the parents that give their kids iPads and video games and stuff like that. And it's like there's a way that an external thing in the world, something of matter. This is where like the big mother issues come in. Like something of matter will give me a type of fulfillment, a type of experience that is incredibly life-giving, and yeah, like life-giving, life-fulfilling. So self-preservation can be so interesting in what an individual finds life-giving and life-fulfilling, and how they cultivate that, how they hold that in themselves, how they commit to that. Because I think self-preservation also understands that when I'm returning home to something, like, it is because I value that thing. Like I am invested in that thing. Like my body and that thing is sustainable. So yeah, creating sustainable structures in life, home. I would get rid of the home, finances, health routines. Like we don't need, like, that's important, but those words are so boring. Sorry, to me, it's very boring. I think the concepts of them don't have to be boring, but why people just don't feel the life in self-preservation is because, yeah, like this language is just not, it's not doing it, I guess. Lots of artists, though, like physical artists, you need to invest in a skill and have a relationship with that external creation and invest in it. Lots of artists will be self-preservation, as in writers, directors, physical, like painters. Like these, if you're leading with self-preservation, like you will return to that thing over and over and over again because you're invested in it. It is life-giving to you. And I also think of as well, like those little babies with iPads. I'm gonna be like one of those people. Those little babies with little iPads. Your brain chemistry, because we're in the body, right? And if let's pretend, I guess let's like I don't know. I'm pretty sure this is like a legitimate thing, but like, I'm not a scientist or biologist, whatever. You know, you've got an aspect of your mind and your gut, right? Like, you've got the body doing its thing and the brain doing its thing, and it's got this intricate network of nervous system, muscle tissue, organs and stuff, like all the good stuff. So you are made of parts, and all these parts are just firing off, talking to one another, and they're like, I like this thing and I don't like that thing, and I need to do this to get that, and blah 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 blah, right? Like, that's how the body works. This is health class 101. So you have pleasure and pain receptors, and self-preservation is going to be, I think, the ability to recognize, consciously or unconsciously, where you get pleasure, what causes pain, and therefore navigating. This is like, overlaps with the head center. Shout out to the video David and I did. Your brain's gonna therefore navigate, create a map, whatever, of life, of reality, of itself, to make sure that those needs and those pathways and those understanding of the external objects are categorized in different ways that are beneficial for your evolution. So self-preservation is, like, at its core, a way to navigate that. And so self-pres middles, like, they'll have a pretty horrible sense of boundaries. Just not right off the bat, not leading with that. And self-pres blinds, I can't even, like, imagine how difficult it is to navigate self-pres needs and what type of relationship external objects or the investment in external objects looks like. That's where, like, everyone's individual path is, and understanding and internal world is going to be incredibly unique and related to specific history of people, places, things, events, timelines, whatever, that feed into their image of self-preservation. So I think that's why it can be very complicated, and it also doesn't just need to be these, like, safe things. Self-preservation is not safe. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to use self-pres to survive, like, you're going to use self-pres to fight off that bear or or hunt for berries in a unknown territory of treacherous winds and storms. Like, self-pres is gonna get you to live through difficult means for the sake of life. I think that's just, like, so interesting as well. Like, we do hard things just, like, to continue living. I don't know. Like, that's just, it's where it's at. So the healthy expression, I think I kind of said enough about that. Respecting boundaries and honors the body's needs. I do think that's pretty accurate. I think all the healthy expressions are pretty accurate. I think the images there get more interesting. Like, your images of self-preservation can be so artful and beautiful and abstract and weird and whatever. Like, to have a healthy relationship to an external object is to let it live its autonomous life, without using it as a means to an end. That is literally, like, what every instinct's gonna come to in conclusion of is, my self-pres stuff is not just dead matter, I guess. It's not all just plastic and meaningless. Like, it has a life of its own. It exists as an image of its own, and I think that's just so fascinating. So self-preservation, respecting boundaries, gets way more involved than just, like, people and individuals, but in the world, like, understanding that each individual thing, object, body in the world is just a little life of its own is important. And honoring the body's needs, and I think needs in a way of just, like, what they are, that's very hard to interpret a lot of the time nowadays. And how to get them met, I think, is also two big things people struggle with. And that, therefore, yeah, definitely has the shadow expression. So fear-driven hoarding of resources. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen that in the world for sure. Time and money, I mean, I don't think that's necessary. There's lots of self-pres people who are terrible at managing money and time. I think like shadow expressions, okay, well, I'll move on. An obsession with control or routine, rigid habits, risk aversion. Again, I think this is very like 9-wing 1, 6-wing 7, like this whole thing is. I don't think that obsession can definitely be a shadow. Numbing can be a shadow. Overindulgence can be a shadow. I think just like feeling the entitlement, an entitlement can be a shadow of self-pres, like I'm entitled to this object or this thing. A total lack of consciousness just around what the object is, what it means, what it's doing for you, and respecting it as its own thing. I think that's just kind of important. Can appear emotionally unavailable or withdrawn. I think so, yeah, like that can be definitely a thing. I think a lot of, like what I was saying last time with attachment types, if their fundamental view of reality is that everything sucks and like, you can't trust people and blah, 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 blah. Like that, if you lead with self-pres, like that can be really rough. Like that self-pres wall can be hard to break down. And I feel like, this is probably a really big generator of loneliness for sure in our culture, is the self-pres wall and the prioritization of self-preservation, and not be able to see self-preservation as life-giving anymore. Like it's just, I'm just gonna use it up like it's a fucking cow, I'm just milking a cow over and over again. It's not a life-giving moving force. I think that's why we have a lot of the images of like, or a lot of the conversations around dead matter and stuff like that. It's like the life isn't being given back to the self-preservation world, and so it's like, how do we have a relationship with something that's dead, right? So I think that's like a huge shadow expression. Moon emoji. So key blind spot, after I said all that, I don't really think that. Maybe this last one here, yeah, like let's stop thinking that self-preservation is just about security and safety, although that can be a part of it, but may suppress vulnerability or needs to maintain independence. I do think this. You can see this with anyone who has self-preservation anywhere, like in their like stacking. So like if you have self-pres first or second, I think that this could definitely be a pretty big blind spot. And may suppress vulnerability is even with yourself, because self-preservation is like, okay, I'm getting an external thing to meet my needs, rather than spending that time being vulnerable with yourself without the external thing meeting the needs. Like that's just a really hard thing to do. I think also with a healthy expression, self-preservation is also just like, I mean, they're saying it they're saying in all of it, but it's just, yeah, like being concerned with yourself and who you are individually and your individuality, how that's expressed, how that's like what you're taking in. So, okay, symbolically, one of the cool things is like to not think of it or put it in external objects, but symbolically speaking, self-preservation is like, what are you nourishing yourself with daily? What nourishes you, and how do you nourish others? Like we think of, I don't know, like the mother archetype, the great mother. She's creative and she's destructive. That, think of the death mother and that dead matter, like it makes life meaningless, it makes things pointless, and so you're kind of just running off of survival rather than like enjoyment, which I think a lot of people, regardless of where self-preservation is in your type, have a really hard time relating to life in a way that is actually fulfilling and enjoying both yourself and others and what you do daily, regardless of the quantity or quality of everything. And so quantity and quality can become another symbolic thing of like, how am I nourishing myself? How am I being nourished? And therefore, like, so it's that giving and receiving. Like, what am I giving myself? Therefore, what am I giving back to the world? Or how am I handling the world? Like, what kind of level of care am I giving to myself and the world? And I just think that's a pretty big cultural wound. And therefore, it does not have to be strictly found in safety, I guess. Let's go on to social. Core drive, belonging and influence within a group or system. Primary concern. Am I relevant, valued, and connected to the collective? That's so silly. No, it's not necessarily the case, but okay. Healthy expression. Deep awareness of group needs, relational dynamics, and shared goals. Builds bridges, leads with heart and vision. Prioritize contribution ethics and a sense of shared humanity, can inspire and uplift communities through alignment and service. Oh, I hate how this is all related to communities. This is a very self-pres social way of describing social. And I think if anything, like, let's say we all collectively in this shared world are basically self-preservation dominant, no matter who you are. That really makes social like one of the biggest blind spots in the whole world. And I think that's definitely going to change as we really start to bring more language to social and its importance, not just in the collective shared group kind of sense. The healthy expressions here, I think one of the core things about social that I like everybody, including social types, are just very unconscious about is your personhood. Like what personhood means and the importance of that being seen, of being validated, of being embodied. I think like social is not just about relationships, although they do reflect in relationships. Like they are reflected. Social instinct is reflected by relationships, for sure. I don't think that the healthy expression here, our big Bermuda chat, she's really going 3-fix here. She's really going self-pres social middle here. She believes that social, its only healthy expression is through the external thing of people and its usefulness. So like social is useful in communities, inspiring and uplifting communities through alignment and service. That's very self-pres. So it's like, leads with heart and vision. Like to a degree, sure, you can lead with heart and vision, but like it does not have to inspire and uplift communities. I think social, when personhood is understood in a much more nuanced way, it's like really, it's again, to go back to the mothering thing, you know, if self-preservation is like the body to body kind of like holding needs of the mother, social are those eyes of the mother and the gaze that she has and the judgment and understanding and validation that the eyes really give. And so I think that like social is being able to hold shadow material, both of yourself first and foremost, before you can ever do it for others, without judgment or shame. And that's so hard to do. And our brains are literally wired to not do it. I would say that's like one of the hardest things to do. And one of the most important things to do with social. So I don't necessarily think relevant is involved, valued and connected. Like you have to think every person has a completely different purpose, and not everybody's going to experience like a heart-centered, valuable, uplifting social fulfillment through communities. And I just don't, I think that type of relationship to social kind of diminishes individuality, because there are lots of individuals that will not feel a draw towards the collective and alignment and service and stuff like that. And so I think there's a way, though, that still those people you don't have to demonize the collective and communities, obviously, because then that would just be doing what everyone else does in a way. But I think, I think that social can be just understanding the complexities of personhood, and really beginning the individuation process of being an individual and not being so influenced and distinctly judging of one kind of person, one group of persons, or one group of people versus another. It's really that, we're really starting to understand that Mom was an other and an other that will also meet or not meet our needs. And so that split in the brain of just like, oh, I have to communicate my needs, or I want them from another person. I want validation. I want something. I want an importance, blah, blah, blah. The shadow expressions that chat describes is pretty interesting. Over-identifies with status or image in the group, self-forgetting. This is very 9 coded. I think 9s would relate to that. Over-identifies with status or image in the group. I don't think it has to be in the group, though. Like, I'm thinking of other social types, and they will definitely over-identify with a status or image, but it does not need to be in the group. It will be collectively based. Like, even a 4 is going to use collective languaging to react to. So they're still in, like, the collective psyche of the group. But the status or image that they're over-identifying with doesn't necessarily have to be... It's definitely... It's all very self-forgetting, but it doesn't have to be in the group. Like, it doesn't have to be... This makes it sound a bit like more positive, I guess. It doesn't have to be a positive thing. Manages self to fit in or be good. Performative belonging. Performative belonging, yes. To fit in or be good, no. I would say definitely manages self. Okay, so again, over-identifying, manages self. Definitely performative. Social can be very performative regardless of where it is in your stacking. And that's something each person has to figure out differently depending on where they are, and what images they're dealing with. But yes, oh my God, is it performative? That's why I think it overlaps with the image center. It is the persona, like it's a mask you wear and identify with. And so performative belonging, this is where definitely like and this next line uses relationships for utility or approval, not intimacy. Utility, so this is where it's like a social instinct, just like self-pres. Majority of the unconscious expression of this instinct is trying to use it as a means to an end. So people I'm just utilizing people to be approved. I'm utilizing people to make myself feel a certain way, to reaffirm the status or image that I've taken on, to reaffirm my belonging, it's not intimacy, it's not vulnerability. It is mainly trying to have others as the external object. So whereas self-pres was given, the little self-pres baby was given the little self-pres iPad to like, whoa, this external object makes me feel good. Social sees Mom's eyes and it was like, yeah, that feels good. Being validated, being seen, being understood in a specific way. And I think that's the other thing too. It doesn't need to be vague at all. Like, this is where it doesn't need to be a positive thing. The image that one. This is where you get really creative in social. What is the image you're over identifying with? That is a form of self-forgetting for sure. There is in everybody some kind of role, image, persona, whatever that you're living through and performing. And so if you go through that unconsciously, then it really becomes a problem. You can run, that's the self-sabotaging kind of thing. But if it's something that at some point is consciously understood, worked through, transformed, and also, in some cases just embodied where you're not performing it, people less and less become utilized as a means to an end. Can become manipulative, elitist, or self-sacrificing for the group's sake. Okay, yes, they can become manipulative, elitist, or I would just say manipulative. Let's get rid of self-sacrificing. Maybe if you're a 9 or 6 or 2 or whatever. Just like a self-pres type, self-pres is has some kind of like narcissism to it and self-indulgence. Social can really be self-indulgent and not for the group's sake. It's usually for the self's sake. Like, even as, I can parade through my life thinking I've done such a wonderful, amazing, self-sacrificial job on social behalf, and really I was just trying to get a need met. So I would not say for the group's sake. I would definitely say for the self's sake, for the persona's sake. Oh, there we go. It's for the persona's sake. Prone to burnout from overcommitment sounds just like extroversion. I wouldn't necessarily say that's social. Key blind spot. May not know who they are apart from group dynamics. I wouldn't say group dynamics. I would say maybe may not know who they are apart from these images. These over-identifications with images. And again, image can really mean anything. Like, for example, an image of a social 3 is going to be possibly positive, possibly particular, possibly shiny, excellent, whatever words you want to throw that. But an image to a social 5 is going to be totally fucking different. A social 5 is going to have a very abstract image and persona that they're over-identifying with. So it does not need to be really serving any group dynamic. It's serving the self. It's instinct. Instinct serves self, in a sense. So may not know who they're apart from that, for sure. Again, that's why personhood is not just the image that performs. It is the many complicated, paradoxical, conflicting parts of self. It's, yeah. Vulnerable to social comparison, image obsession, or martyrdom. Who is this? Is this 6 now? Like, is this a 6 related? Vulnerable to social comparison. Definitely vulnerable to social comparison and image obsession. Again, doesn't need to be positive things, but obviously on the mind. Martyrdom, no, we don't need that. That's some 9 stuff or 9-6 stuff. So definitely these 2 things for sure, but we should get really nuanced with them. Why comparison? Is it good, bad? Is it important? Is it not important? Is it interesting versus dull, boring? That kind of thing. Versus image obsession. What is image? Again, like, image obsession can be very obviously image type related, but with social image, it is a persona, it's a role, it's something I am fulfilling as a part, opposed or connected to, related to from the collective. It's collective based. Sexual, oh god. How long have I been going for? Sexual 1-to-1. See, and that's what I love. Like, y'all need to put 1-to-1 because you're so uncomfortable, but you don't do any hashtags. What are they? Any of those little lines. Any others for social or self-pres. That'd be more fun, So let's pretend that's not there, but we get it. Chat is a sexual blind Bermuda, so she's uncomfortable with the word sexual. Okay, core drive. Transformation through deep connection and intensity. No. Primary concern. Am I alive, desired, and deeply bonded to another or to what sets me on fire? Woo, spicy. What the hell? Okay, well, I mean, that's kind of interesting. Like, I would say sexual blinds will probably definitely relate to it in that sense, but sexual types probably not. Healthy expression, passionate, courageous, and authentic in pursuit of depth and intimacy. Catalyzes transformation in others through intense presence. Ooh, what? Willing to risk for love, truth, or creative expression. Oh boy. Forms deep, meaningful bonds that go beyond the surface. That's so funny. Shadow expression. Addicted to intensity. Mistakes emotional charge for intimacy. Over focus on special relationships. Special, in quote. Obsession with chemistry or ideal partners. May provoke or manipulate to feel powerful or desired. Struggles with jealousy, merging, or control in connection. Avoid stability. Bored by the mundane. That's funny. Blind spot. Equates identity with emotional fusion or erotic intensity. Okay. May avoid stillness, solitude, or long-term commitment if it lacks spark. One of the problems I'm having with the core drives, if these are for like pretty much for self-sustaining, like self-fulfillment, self-survival even. The drives are very like just willy-nilly put together. I don't think they're creative enough because I don't really think anyone has a drive for transformation through deep connection and intensity. I think that's very optimistic about people. I think we have to be a little honest here and understand that our drives are very self-centered for most of our life to get our needs met because they have to be. And then the process of breaking away from those objects, again, using objects and people and things as a means to an end are, you know, where we actually start to understand ourselves as individuals and not patterns and unconscious beings. So the core drive, I would not attribute this to sexual instinct. I think core drives, I guess, for all of these types would be really complex. And so let's go to, if we're using a means to an end, using objects as a means to an end, sexual instinct is going to use people and themselves as a way to be sexually fulfilling. Like, okay, we can have a way that we are fulfilled, that things are giving us life, and that's very self-preservation. We have a way that people and personalities, personas, selfhood gives us our needs of self-fulfillment, our needs of fulfillment, enjoyment, understanding, blah, blah, blah. For sexual, it's like, there's definitely an aspect of merging, for sure, like psychological and physical merging. Yeah, I think at its core is probably that it wants to be desirable. Primary concern, am I alive, desired, and deeply bonded to another? I don't think so. Like, I want to be desirable, I want to be attractive, I want to be seen with all of my adornments, and probably, like, I want to be activated. Like, this is kind of getting to it, but it's still just a little flat. What sets me on fire? Like, what really turns me on? What activates me? That's why it's like, what sets me on fire? Yeah, like, what really turns me on? And, like, completely selfishly, too. I think that's why it doesn't necessarily have to do with being deeply bonded to another, because sexual is that really interesting liminal space that's in between. You know, there's a self-pres aspect to it, like there's a way that we physically show up and that we physically want our sexual stimulation, But then there's also the social quality of just like, one particular person, or like a particular kind of relationship is stimulating to me. A very particular kind of relationship stimulates me. And so it's a lot to do, I think, with stimulation, both in the sexual sense and in just like the erotic sense. And I think we could kind of separate those two, because not everything needs to be led to like the act of sex, but there is an erotic quality that stimulates both the individual and other, whether it be purposefully or in its essence or as a performance. A healthy expression of sexual instinct to me, because also one of the things I believe is within the sexual instinct is our relationship to masculine and feminine energies. I mean, you hear those words all the time. You can use whatever words you like to describe them, but them as energies are really important in like understanding ourselves and understanding our relationships with people, because they are like the carriers of majority of our projections on ourselves and other human beings. So what we project onto the gendered characteristics of masculine and feminine energies are going to be revealing of our connection with our own sexual instinct, because I think a healthy expression of the sexual instinct is a comfortable and confident feeling and container of your own sexuality, which is where you therefore don't use another person to merge with and lose yourself, but rather to see as an individual and absolutely adore what they show up as, because you are adoring how you show up. And I think that's really complicated. I don't think that's talked enough about, but that is exactly where the polarities come from in the sexual instinct. Like, the sexual instinct in an unconscious way, to really kind of level it out in the same degree as the self-preservation and social shadows, like shadow expression. I'd kind of get rid of all of this. And a shadow expression of sexual, it really shows like how we hold men and women in our unconscious minds. You're gonna have the collective stereotypes, the familial expressions, the experiences throughout life. Like you grow up with parents who really take on specific characteristics of these energies, and typically in a not a very positive light. We do not have many stellar examples to look up to of healthy connections to sexuality, I should say. I think we're trying to get there, just like the social instinct stuff, but we are far from perfect about it. I don't think we'll ever be perfect, but you get what I mean. Far from healthy, I should say. So I think this is, where you can see it in everyone's shadow, individually, collectively, that like everyone to some degree sexualizes and objectifies the energies of masculinity and femininity, because in our psyches, it's like those qualities, those energies hold a lot in them. Like a lot, So however we relate to those are going to tell us how we relate to our own sexuality. And I think that's why there is this language over intensity and passion and like polarity and chemistry and stuff like that. Like when you have two forces that are dancing together and both of them hold just a history, a millennia, whatever, of of archetypal and personal baggage. Like, that's gonna be really important. So, like, our personal histories with our mothers, our fathers, our family members, our early relationships, our early partnerships, the way that we react and respond to collective expressions of these energies. Like, there's so much shame and anger and guilt put into the sexual instinct, and the social instinct and the self-pres instinct. But in this one in particular, like, that's really going to flavor how you hold your own sexuality, how it's expressed, how it's contained, how it's not contained, what you're seeking for in intimacy or in partnership, and how you're using yourself or other people, again, as a means to an end. And I think that's really, really important. I think that's why no matter where it is in your stacking, just like understanding that is, and like really untangling that mess is, it's, again, lifelong, and it can be painful, but it also can be really beautiful. And it just gets you closer to yourself, your authenticity, your embodiment of these things, and how you actually want to show up. Like, kind of going back to that strong ego thing, it's like, what is the sexual instinct in an ego? Because we want to talk about, like, oh, it's just chasing your desires. Like, where does it say? Willing to risk for love, truth, or creative expression. Willing to blow up your whole life for something that you're attracted to, or someone you're attracted to. Like, yeah, there can be a destructive quality, and there can be a comfort in knowing what destruction will bring. But it's like, it doesn't need anything that feels as if it's like fated is usually just unconscious. Like that, whatever that one famous quote is from Jung, Carl Jung. I'll put it up on the screen or something. That's what one doesn't work through with the unconscious, just feels like fate or something. I don't know, I'll put it up there. Yeah, I think that's something that doesn't really get talked about with sexual, and therefore it's not necessarily one-to-one. It is very self versus other, for sure. And I think it's just a way of finding, like, how to express sexuality in a way that's more from an individual than it is from some kind of, like, parental dynamic or societal dynamic of collective ideas of sexuality and collective images of masculinity and femininity. And I think we obviously can see that happening a lot, of just that being brought into conversation and understood differently and understood more fluidly. And then you can also see the responses, the shame and the guilt and the anger that can bring up in people. So, one big aspect, I think, of each instinct to level them all out is in their shadow qualities. Like, each one of them has, like, a really deep, like, deadening shadow to them. Like, self-preservation is meaningless suffering in life, and social, the social shadows that you can get into are just really awful and shameful. And then sexual shadows are even more vulnerable and painful. Each one of them, regardless of where they are in your stacking, like, require a lot of patience and a lot of time and effort to hold them without judgment, and to, like, withdraw the unconscious, like, grabbing and drive you use out in the world, and to expect the external thing to feed what's actually internal. Which I think, yeah, that's, like, the nature of projection, is, like, this external thing is feeding me in a way that I do not like, or that I do like, and I'm going to respond according to that interpretation. It's either meeting my need or it's not meeting my need, and I'm responding to that. That can be really damaging to, like, an individual, like an individual's sense of self and their sense of reality and the world and the things that are in it and the things they can do in it. and all that fun stuff. So that's why I think like even just using the word desire, I think that can really be in each instinct, because instincts feel like desires. Like they feel like you are fulfilling some kind of desire. So I don't think it's just a sexual instinct thing, and that's why I really tried to just focus on the sexual instinct being sexuality, which is an expression of self and unique kind of individuality and the attractiveness of that and stuff like that. I think that's why even looking at like using the language of like should or shouldn't, right or wrong, or that person is doing it this way or that way, like I think it's really hard to there's one way you can understand instinct instinct type, like we've done in previous videos, where you're like observing a person moving about the world and you're like, okay, that's what that type is doing. And then it's another thing to understand the instincts on an internal level and understand how they're operating in you, how you relate to them, what images they're carrying within you, what kind of power that has over your ego, what kind of power you're giving away, essentially. I think that's a big thing too, is that like we all kind of grasp for some kind of control or understanding or power, and it's all outside of ourselves in some form, and this is not just attachment types. And it's just the way that we relate to it is different. I like to focus more on the internal representation of these things, and how that process of entanglement from things that I was made up with, but I did not select myself. I think that's the thing. It's kind of like what we're all trying to do in a way, is like untangle myself through the things I just kind of like I came with and that I took on unconsciously, and that I needed for survival to really get to the stuff that I have selected or that I have chosen consciously. And again, that's why with like the language that chat uses, it's not all about its usefulness out in the world. It's not all, these instincts are not all just ways to be a better person, whatever that means, better, that it's mainly just like feeling more of an expansion in the self. Like I can hold much more of myself, and therefore much more of others and much more of the world. That is not just this fixed pattern and this kind of like one trick pony sort of thing. Please follow or subscribe, whatever it is now. If you haven't already, it really helps. But and comment any thoughts, questions, ideas. And until next time, goodbye.